Hi, my name's Anna Delaney, and I'm part of the team here at ISMG. I hope you're having an excellent summit so far. Welcome to this session entitled How to be a SOAR Winner. And your speaker will be Sam Humphreys, security strategist at Exabeam. In this session, she'll outline the fundamentals of SOAR, how SOAR can help your organization, how to approach your SOAR initiative, what you should and shouldn't automate, and how to measure SOAR success. Sam, it's all yours.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Humphreys. Anna's very kindly covered my second slide, so that's awesome. So I won't go through that again because you literally just heard it. So a little bit about me. I won't focus on this too long because that's not why you're here. I've been doing security for 21 years as of last weekend. I've done a lot of different roles. I've said sorry a lot. I've got built products and I've dealt with all manner of incidents. Nephrophile means lover of clouds. It's nothing illegal. And I'm here if you'd like to have a party, but obviously not now. Do come find me on Twitter. I'm there. I write a lot, speak a lot, probably too much. Yeah, come over to Twitter, or indeed let's make friends on LinkedIn should you wish. So if we were in a real room now, which we're not, I'd probably ask a few questions about the audience and who you are and what your role is, but we don't have that luxury right now for reasons attributable to this sticker. So let's move on. Statement of the talk. I fundamentally believe that SOAR is an HR benefit and will do wonders for your organization on a human level, not just from an efficiency point of view. So we will come back to this as I go through the slides. So first off, we'll back up a little bit and talk about some of the basics of SOAR, just to make sure that we're all talking the same language. We'll cover a little bit about what Gartner thinks it is, and then make sure that people have kind of got an idea of what we're talking about and why we're here, rather than me making the assumption that you know this. If you do know this, I'm sorry, enjoy the memes. SOAR now stands for Security, Orchestration, Automation, and Response. It was coined this by Gartner back in 2017. But fun fact of the day, it used to be called Security Operations, Analytics, and Reporting. So the different pieces to this, I think security is fairly self-explanatory. The orchestration piece is around integrating your technologies. And then the automation piece is around automated detection and response tools to decrease the time it takes you to respond to incidents. It can help you from a reactive point of view, from a response, tracking metrics and case management. And also you can do proactive tasks with SOAR as well, such as threat hunts and automating various bits of your security program. But it is not new. And automation, if there's any folks in the house that have been from the IT world initially, we've been automating things really since computers. This is my automated version of me. It replies to my emails when I'm away and talks about me in the third person. But as everyone knows, with an out of office, they're fairly pointless anyway because people still send you emails. Automation as an idea isn't something we thought of this week. But there are definitely ways of using it in security to really improve how you do things and what that means for your team. SOAR is an HR benefit. Okay, our friends at Gartner refer to it this way. I won't read all their words. This is from their IT glossary. I make no apologies for the terrible pun at the bottom of the screen. But ultimately, it's getting more from your tools and doing things quicker and faster in the right way. Because there are some gotchas with SOAR which we'll cover. And there are definitely some things that you shouldn't do, because the awesome power of automation means that you can very quickly automate a lot of things to happen. And as someone who spent a fair chunk of their career apologizing, I can say very well that I've seen firsthand how quickly automated actions can cause problems on networks. So when we think about SOAR, the two areas really that people think about is having playbooks and workflows. Now, some of those playbooks can be semi-automated or completely automated. I think it's always good to have human touch points where it makes sense. And especially if you're going into this new, automating a full end-to-end process and then gingerly hitting a button and hoping that it works can be a little terrifying. When you're looking at this, I think thinking about the playbook side is making sure that things are very well documented and understood before you go anywhere near automating them. So if you can't explain what something is and you don't understand the workflow behind it, then chances are when you do go to set this up, something will at best be unexpected and at worst be horrible. So that's what SOAR is. let's talk about how this can help you in your organization. I'd like you to think about the answers to these questions. Are your people using their skills and their expertise to the best of their ability? Are things feeling rather manual? I do find it slightly strange that we work in these wonderfully technical IT environments and still we're doing a lot of manual work. It seems counterintuitive, but for a lot of organizations, if that's the way you've been doing something for a while, thinking about changing it, especially if it looks like it's working, can be a little terrifying. Alert fatigue is well understood. I can't imagine anybody watching this right now is thinking, I really wish I had more security alerts. And false positives are indeed the bane of our industry. I refer back to apologizing that I've done. Unfortunately, a lot of security tools will either change or remove code from machines, or indeed make decisions based on information that will lead them down a path, tell you something that's not quite right. Again, if we were in a room, pop quiz, what do you think the percentage of SOC time the team has spent chasing down false positives? I can see a whole sea of hands up here. Yes, the correct answer is 25% of your time, which is a lot. If you ever think about false positives, everybody understands them, we all hate them. What's more worrying, though, are false negatives. So the things that we aren't getting to, the things that tools aren't detecting, they're always the things I think that are more concerning. If we then get into people, I find security a strange industry for this, so that it's almost kind of acceptable for all of us that we have to, in our own time, take the training that in other industries we probably get to do during our actual paid hours. It seems bizarre, it has been this way for a long time, but when I speak to SOC analysts of varying degrees of tenure, they've just come to terms with this as how the world works. If they want to get on, they need to do training in their own time. The best companies I find with the happiest people are actually spending time during the day to train their employees. And that's how it should be, to my mind. If you like learning more stuff in your own time, fantastic. I could totally do that. But you should still be experience improvements from your employer who's going to see the benefits of that. And then this last question may seem a little bit flippant, but maths were done. This has come from my friend Rick Ferguson, who works over at Trend. 60% of banks report they receive round about 100,000 alerts a day, which is an absolute vast amount. There's no way on this planet that everybody can get to that number of alerts unless they had 1,736 SOC analysts. Now, if you happen to work in a SOC with 1,736 SOC analysts, fantastic. You can do all this manually. But for most of us, that's not even a pipe dream. That just seems so ridiculous, like it's unimaginable. So if anyone wants to understand the maths, chat to me afterwards. But that's based on looking at 25 minutes per alert. And a scarier number is actually 17% of banks are reporting 300,000 alerts a day. So my brain doesn't work that quickly, but that does seem even more horrific. So moving on. If you're answering yes to some of these questions and you think, actually, we're not able to get to all this stuff, we are worried about false positives, we're definitely worried about the things that we're not seeing, and we're not taking time to train our people, then SOAR can really, really help you. But you might have some concerns. And these are valid concerns. Will the machines mess things up? I go back again to the fact I've apologized about. There's definitely a trust element here. If computers can go much faster than we can, if they're going to do something wrong, they will do it at a speed much faster than we can do anything about. And then there are some human concerns here. Well, if automation is going to take away a lot of this easily repeatable work, in many cases, that's performed by the more junior analysts. What does that mean for them? Are we automating them out of a job? Do we need to go and only hire people with like longer careers, more seasoned analysts? Or where do we get them from? If people can't start junior and then train up, this seems to be creating this bizarre paradox of we only need senior people. What about the junior folks? And how do we attract fresh talent? You know, everybody's very aware of the definition of madness from Einstein. But there's a separate quote which I will completely hose up now, which is really around if you want something to change, you need to have a different viewpoint. So having that fresh new talent come in is so beneficial. Different ways of thinking, different experiences. But if automation is doing the job that they will do, how do we even make that a thing? And then we get into I think this is the most mind-blowing of all the things. With automation tools, you can make pretty much anything do anything. And that's a lot to think about, because then how do you really hone down on what are the things that would make a difference? And this whole quandary can become almost overwhelming. So maybe let's not bother and let's all go home and thanks for coming to Sam's talk. It's been amazing. Lovely to see you. But that's not true. There are definitely things that can help. I'm hoping the next few slides will talk about a few ways that actually these concerns you may have can be dealt with and maybe aren't the problem that they look to be on the surface. Here are 5, and I promise you there's a 5th, reasons why you should bother with automation. Firstly, improving operational efficiency and accuracy is important. If you're doing something that is well understood, repeatable, well documented, and automating that process, you will see efficiency and accuracy gains. You will reduce the risk off the back of this. The more that you can tackle, the more you can do it repeatedly, it is very easy to reduce risk to your environment. I'm not saying it will go away completely, because that is not the world in which we live, but certainly you can bring that risk levels down. Very important. Everybody's got a lot of tools in their security stack these days. It is so uncommon that I would talk to somebody who has the age-old antivirus and firewall. Most of us have a whole bunch of tools that aren't particularly well integrated. We may not be using them to the best of their ability or our ability. And we're spending a lot of money on these things. And you think, well, if we're throwing all this money at all these tools, why aren't we seeing value? And why are threats still getting through? So SOAR will help you with that, for sure. And then a big one, I think time is absolutely the most valuable commodity in security operations ad infinitum. And it's very easy to waste time, especially if you're doing things manually, or you're not really harnessing the power of the security stack to drive decision support within your organization. And our 5th reason, no surprise here, is that SOAR is an HR benefit. So one of the top 4 reasons that people quit their job is routine and a lack of challenge. It's a real problem. Now, if you think about our industry, where burnout is alive and well, unfortunately, and probably more so at the moment, having so much work to do and not enough time, not feeling that your employer is necessarily investing in you, that can be a kind of a danger triangle at that point, because what we do is hard. People join security, most of us do it because we want to go fight the good fight, but also most of us kind of enjoy stress as a thing, and we'll kind of put that behind us and say, yes, I understand I work in a stressful environment. But those cracks can show. So here's some facts that we've got, some research that was done, I think will help drive this home a little more. So I'm going to start with some Exabeam research. We produce a report every year called State of the SOC. We survey a whole bunch of people. It's not just our customers. It's a great report. We'll have it in the booth so you can go and check it out. But here are just a few tidbits from that report. Some of these won't seem to be particularly shocking. This year, 40% of SOCs reported that they are understaffed. It's only up a little bit from last year. It was 38% in 2019. But when we talk about the skills gap, security operations teams are feeling this. And I think the skills gap is, depending on the type of role you're looking for, it can be better or worse. But SOC teams are really feeling that they don't have enough people. When we were talking to the analysts, their biggest pain point and their reason for leaving an organization, a whopping 64% of them cited an undefined career path as the reason. Okay, and then if we look at talking to the SOC analysts, a whopping 64% of SOC analysts cited undefined career path as the reason that they choose not to stay with their organization. So if you add that to the training challenge that we mentioned earlier, people are working long hours, they're potentially doing longer shifts than they're normally scheduled for, they're feeling understaffed, and they don't feel like they have a future with the organization. That's really worrying. So are we losing people from the industry? Are you losing people from your organization? That would be, I think, one of the things to really look at. If you're running a security operations team and you haven't sat down with your folks to do a career path review recently, please take that away and maybe in the next 2 weeks do that. It's seemingly a very big problem. And it's something that I think as leaders is fairly straightforward to tackle, but you need to take the time to do it. 29% of SOC analysts cited a challenging working environment as a reason that they stay. So I said earlier that some of us really do enjoy the stress, and we do. So having interesting work to do, not just stressful work, there is a difference. And SOAR can help you with this. And then we asked all of the respondents to talk to us about their concerns for the SOC. Now, in the C-suite, just shy of 30% of CIOs and CISOs were worried about SOC staff inexperience. When you got to the front line, that number jumped to nearly half. So we don't have enough people. We don't have career paths. Work isn't always interesting, but when it is, we love it. And so the SOC inexperience is definitely a pain point, but we're not taking time to train people. You can see kind of how this cascades very, very easily. So we need time. We need to spend time talking to our employees. That's important. And we need to create interesting work for people to do. And security is not short of interesting work. That's why we join it in the first place as a career. But it's very easy. If you end up stuck doing something that's not particularly interesting, you're not feeling supported, and say you've spent 8 hours on something and it actually turns out to be a false positive, it's not a great use of your time, and you're probably not going to go home that day feeling particularly satisfied that you've done the best work you could do. Do check out the report. If you'd like to hear from somebody that's not Exabeam, it's some more research that backs up the training side of things. So this was a report done in 2019 that's called Life and Times of Security Professionals in 2018. Really, really good report from the Enterprise Strategy Group and Information Systems Security Association. 63% of the respondents absolutely echoed this issue around training, because they weren't provided the right level of training. Round about the same, so they don't even have any time to do it in the first place. We need to tackle this. It's not acceptable to expect people to do training in their own time, and it's not acceptable to give them kind of lip service towards training. We've got incredibly smart people working in security. Let's really help build them up. Good news though, pretty much 4/5 said that they believe that automation will help them, both from a workload and a career point of view. SOAR is an HR benefit. You can check that out as well. I don't think we have it on the booth today, but if you look for the Life and Times of Security Professionals, Google and or any other search engine that you may use will have that available for you. Okay, so hopefully now you're at the point where you think, yes, this is going to work for me. I'd like to approach this. I maybe haven't done it before. What should we and what should we not automate? Firstly, when you're making your plan, some of this seems really obvious, but you may have skills in-house to do it yourself. There are plenty of vendors out there who have tools available, but build, buy, partner, I would absolutely recommend talking to your IT team to see what they've done, because they will have tools they've been using as well. Some of them may be geared more towards IT and not towards security. But if you are building or you're partnering, important things to consider also include who's going to use this, who's going to maintain it. And then once you've figured that out, like, where do we start? Well, here are some things to start with. Everything, yeah. No, don't store all the things. Really don't. But if you do, also consider updating your LinkedIn profile, because chances are you'll need it fairly quickly. So, repeatable, well-documented processes. And here's some ideas for you. So, phishing triage, malware triage. Very repeatable. There's a lot of things coming through the door. If you've got a phishing inbox and that's generally overflowing, if you have a human sitting there looking at that, that's not ideal. A lot of the things that will have to happen to a potential phishing email when it comes in the door are the same things every single time. So phishing is a great one for that. Same for suspicious files. That triage can be done automatically. If you have targeted threat hunts that you perform regularly, that could be that you get a list of IOCs from somewhere. It may be that there's some specific things that you go and look for when you've got time, but it seems to be you're doing the same thing every time. Automate that, get that information to you. And then evidence gathering can be another great one, is that you can just get the automation, not to do anything to prevent something from happening, but at least provide you with a centralized body of information that can help you with your decision support so that you can then use your incredibly smart brain to go and make decisions around that information rather than hunting for it manually, sitting there writing query after query after query into the database. Have automation bring you that details, and if it can, have some recommendations with it as well. The nice thing with doing that is that actually somebody who is more junior in their career has then got that information centralized, especially with the recommendations. And then they can maybe have somebody who's maybe more senior come and sit with them and walk them through what they do with that, rather than spending all the time pulling that data together and then handing it to somebody else and never really knowing why that information was there in the first place. So there are some ideas to get started. Decision support is exactly what it's there for. I don't believe any of us are going to get automated out of a career. Our jobs may be automated, and that's okay, providing you're providing training, mentoring, and a career path for people. Even if you are just automating like part of a process, you're still going to need humans to be involved somewhere at the beginning or the end to confirm that what you've got is correct, or maybe just say, yes, this is good. Now we can move to the next step. It's a button and we carry on. Even if you have a small team, this can really, really drive efficiencies for you. Taking the human element out when it's not needed, so that then your SIM, your logs, your analytics tools, anything that's providing alerts, can all provide you with decision support at a much faster level that you're not having to go hunt for information. This is really important. Someone said this to me a few weeks ago, and I wrote it down and said, this is absolutely right, and you shouldn't. The things you should not automate. The outcome of what you do automate must never be worse than the attack itself. So if you work in an industry where ultimately there are lives at risk, either directly or indirectly, so hospitals, potentially power can be a place here where I think you have to be very careful about what you do automate. Pick your picture on the screen. Strangely, a lot of these areas are quite heavily automated from an IT point of view, but from a security perspective, because we have the ability to change or remove code, maybe think very, very carefully about what you do automate. The other area is if you have like a big event going on, so like a very serious breach, you think there are potentially nation state attackers in your network. I know these are fortunately few and far between, but if that does happen, be very, very careful about automation in those situations. And I've seen this happen. There was a very, very large attack back in 2012 against Saudi Aramco. And a few weeks into them thinking there were attackers in the network, and this is public news, I'm not sharing anything scary and hopefully nobody's going to come knock on my door, is that the attackers realized that they were being watched. And then they kicked off possibly the most destructive attack I've ever seen happen, where they flattened the best part of 70,000 machines in about 2 minutes. Literally flattened everything to the point it was unusable. It is possible, maybe not on that level, but if an attacker notices that you're onto them and you're doing some particular research, or all of a sudden you start shutting things down around them, you don't know what else they've placed on the network at this point. Be very careful in those circumstances. Our friends over at Mandiant, in their incident response playbook, they really recommend having one big drastic remediation event. So when you do go for it, you absolutely go for it, and there's no or little chance of something kicking off. But be very careful if you're working in these industries. Certainly around the response piece, like evidence gathering, fine. Some of the triage stuff, fine. But if you're doing automated remediation, which is probably the scariest step of all, really, really consider what that can mean, and maybe look at some of the lower risk parts of the network when you're doing that. Okay, so we're ready to get started, and we're not going to automate all the things. A few things that I recommend. Do start slowly. It's not a sprint. Have human touch points to make you feel more comfortable and to confirm that you're not going to do something that's going to cause you a LinkedIn updating moment in your life. Start with parts of the process and really go through it a few times and consider some of the different options you can see. I mean, we've all seen it worked in my test environment, and then something gets released into the wild, and then it's very different. So as you're testing this out, I think having lots of different test use cases can be very, very helpful. Don't auto remediate until you are super comfortable, because Even if that's something like automated patching, there are so many gotchas that can happen there. When I first started talking to people about auto remediation and patching came up, because patching is hard. It's just not easy to patch everything, unless you are a vendor sitting in your ivory tower saying, just patch the things. But in reality, that's not how it works. So just be very, very careful around that. And again, have lots and lots of test cases as you're going through and building that out. And like anything important, measuring really does matter so that you can show the success. So metrics, everyone loves metrics, more metrics for everyone. Well, not really. Most of the things that you're measuring today, especially in security operations, so things like mean time to respond seems to be one of the most common ones I see most places have in their security operations teams. Mean time to respond should never be one giant metric for the whole organization. I'm sure you're looking at it on a more granular level. On those areas where you're doing things like triage, you should see those numbers from a time point of view come down considerably, which is great. And you also should be able to see the amount you're dealing with go up. They seem like very obvious things, but those metrics are probably in place already. If for some reason you haven't had any metrics in your security operations center or in your security team, it would be a good time now to implement them. Otherwise, you can say, well, it feels really good that we're doing this SOAR stuff, and I don't know, we're doing more, but you want numbers to show to the gods. Those things are important. The one big thing I would like you to measure though on top is measuring SOAR from a human perspective, because SOAR is an HR benefit. So this can be little things. It can be employee satisfaction. It could be how much more training are we doing now? Have our attrition rates gone down? Even something as simple as a net promoter score, which is one question. These are all things that will help you. And if you're really making changes to the environment for your employees, you should see positive success in these areas as well. Okay, so 3 takeaways and a call to action. So SOAR is there to provide you with decision support. It's not there to destroy careers. Please only automate highly repeatable, well-documented processes. SOAR is an HR benefit, but it's so much more as well. And my call to action, if you pop over to the booth, come and have a chat with our team. The State of the SOC report is there. Please read it. There are good recommendations in there for you to help drive some of these benefits across your organization.
Sam, thank you so much for your insight. It was an excellent session. And thank you, our audience, for listening and sharing your questions and comments. Enjoy the rest of the summit.